But I think next abstraction will be English. Like if you know English, you are a programmer and you will be able to develop those applications.
I think there are two ways to look at all of these things. You can be super paranoid, super worried that you will be replaced, or you embrace the technology, just get better at your craft.
But I think there is another possibility that you probably only need a product manager in your team. Take the resume of the candidate, dump it on ChatGPT, and ask ChatGPT that, hey, I'm interviewing this particular person for so-and-so role. Can you give me 10 different questions?
Sounds like a very nice use case. I'm just wondering whether it will lead to more people becoming lazy.
Hi, I'm Dhaval, co-founder of Airtribe. Welcome to episode 2 of the Airtribe Podcast. In today's episode, Navneet and I are going to talk about ChatGPT and its implication on product development. Let's get started. Bro, do you know who is earning 3-4 crore rupees nowadays?
No. Who?
Prompt engineers. So I saw an ad a couple of days back, and this guy comes and says that prompt engineers are earning 3-4 crore rupees nowadays. And that's quite misleading, unfortunately, right? And the whole technology is a lot more superior. ChatGPT is helping people out and everything. But then there are some people who just want to make money by misleading everybody else. And I don't think anybody is making 3-4 crore rupees. Probably somebody who was already making 2.5 crore rupees, they are making 50 lakhs extra because now they can work efficiently. But a random Tom, Dick and Harry, I don't think they can learn prompt engineering and they can start earning 3-4 crore. That's just impossible.
I feel maybe some courses might be advertising this, like, learn prompt engineering in 4 weeks and start earning 3 crores.
Not even 4 weeks. The promise was 3 hours.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah. And that's the most amazing ROI I have ever seen.
Only the ROI that we haven't had ourselves.
Yeah.
So, Dhaval, what's your snack of the day?
We are having pizza khakra from Gujarat today.
Interesting.
But keeping this aside, let's talk about today's topic. What are we discussing today?
Today we are going to talk about product development in the age of ChatGPT.
Okay, great.
So before we jump into that, what is ChatGPT in simple terms?
So before you understand ChatGPT, I think you need to understand what is GPT. GPT is generative pre-trained transformer. Generative pre-trained transformer. GPT.
It sounds like Neil Nitin Mukesh to me.
Kind of, yeah. Generative means it can generate new text. P is for pre-trained. That means it is trained on billions of pages and it has billions of parameters right now. And T is transformers, the technology behind GPT, which is again built on top of neural networks. Now, what GPT does is, because it is trained on so much of data, it can understand language, specifically English. It can definitely understand other languages as well right now, but English is the primary language because that's the input, like large portion of input is, like I'm assuming that large portion of input is on English right now. And so it can understand language, it can understand grammar, and it can start predicting the next word for you. That's all the technology is right now, right? So you give us half a sentence and then it'll start predicting the next possible word for you. You see something like, who is Anil Ambani? And then pause there. If the transformer has the information about Anil Ambani, it'll start giving you the answer there. Anil Ambani is blah, 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 and it will continue the answer from that point onwards. So that's the whole technology. The ChatGPT part, it is built on top of GPT, but it's primarily trained for dialogue. So the agent or the AI agent and a human being can engage in a dialogue. And that's what the whole model is optimized for. So rather than just filling the blanks or just predicting the next text, it can also communicate or it can also have a chat with you. And that's the Chat GPT for you. So right now we have Chat GPT, which is GPT 3.5. And the latest model, as per our today's recording date, it is GPT 4. It might change in the next couple of months. Nobody knows. But yeah, that's where we are right now.
Got it. Just for our audience, because you mentioned it's a kind of technology that predicts the next word. I wanted to talk about an example that all of us use on a day-to-day basis, perhaps, without realizing it. So I think most of us use Gmail as a
Yep.
primary email tool, and there is this interesting feature, Smart Compose, which has been there for the last few years. Smart Compose basically uses something like a transformer or a language model to predict the next set of words, not just the next word. And this is something I think one of the more wider use cases
Yes,
of
that's
modern
true.
machine learning.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's GPT in a nutshell. Let's talk about some of the common use cases of ChatGPT, like how you are using ChatGPT. I can share some of my use cases, and we can also share how we are using GPT and its application at Airtribe. Let's dive deeper into that.
Cool. There are multiple use cases for which I use ChatGPT for. Primarily when I have to start working on a new project, whether it's a project related to product or community or learning experience at Airtribe, every project has to start with, why we are doing it. And if there are people who have already done something like this, basically market research. So whenever I start a new project, I start with a little bit of market research for which ChatGPT can be super helpful. I can ask it questions like, what are the other players in the market who have used uh, this feature or this technology, to solve a particular customer problem. I can start from there. Second thing is, whenever I have to think about what would be the success criteria for that project, I need to identify the right metrics. I have two options. I can start from scratch, or I can take help from ChatGPT to get the early inputs and build on top of that. Third thing is always every project has to go live,
Yeah.
and what is going to be your go-to market for that project? For that also, I have used ChatGPT and it works quite well. All of this combined together basically makes the whole process of deciding what to build and how to go about launching it 10x more efficient, and I get to spend a lot more time on creative stuff. I can spend time doing brainstorming, I can spend time talking to actual customers to validate my hypothesis. But many of the things I used to spend hours on now are delegated to ChatGPT.
True. Yeah. It's a great assistant, right? Right now, the promise of that being an assistant is it's actually true. Like you can any repetitive work or any boring work which you feel that like you know how to do it, you can ask a question and you can get the answer. I think ChatGPT is the best solution there. For me personally, engineering use cases are pretty limited right now because the kind of limitations ChatGPT has on the input size. You cannot send more than like around 4,000 tokens. GPT-4 has around 8,000 tokens support, but that is increasing with the newer models. But there are still a few use cases where if I need to write a very small script, earlier I need to Google around and then like do bunch of like do some testing and then go ahead with that particular script. If it was one off script and if it is just a small script without any context of my current code base, I can just ask ChatGPT that hey, I have this input, I want to get the output in so and so format in so and so this is my use case, just do this. Or for an example, I want to transform images from A to B, like I want to color grade the images, then obviously I can write my code, do a Google search and everything, but ChatGPT will just give me the full script. So those use cases are pretty useful. um, we are also using as a team at Airtribe, we are using ChatGPT heavily in multiple different touch points. Like our marketing team uses ChatGPT very, very heavily in terms of the generating some of their content, our marketing ads, our social media posts, where we take inspiration from ChatGPT. Our learning experience design, I work with Sora very closely. So we have our backend engineering launchpad going on. There, I think like I can design a good assignment for that for that course, but to put it in a very well structured document, I take help from ChatGPT that hey, this is my rough idea. Can you convert it into a proper assignment? And that's something ChatGPT will do it beautifully for me. And that's what we have been using for our programs as well. So, and across our team, I think everybody is using ChatGPT very, very heavily.
These are some very interesting examples, and I think it makes things very transformative. You talked about some very serious examples. One example I wanted to, share with the audience here. Um, because as founders, you also have to write on social media sometimes. To some people say building the personal brand. Some people say it just helps build more credibility for the company. So you should do it. But one of the struggles I used to have was regarding even if I write a post for which you can actually take some help from something like ChatGPT. As you know very well, from the very beginning at Airtribe, we have been fond of emojis.
Yep.
And you and me, we just can't write a post without emojis.
Yep.
And one of the use cases I have been trying and absolutely love is not having to think about which emoji goes where. So I write the post, give it to ChatGPT and ask it to add the right emojis. Very simple, very small use case, but I think of it as a very delightful use case.
True. Yeah.
And there are hundreds of other examples where I think technology like this can help save you a lot of time.
Yes. Any mundane task, right? Like anything where you think you can just tell somebody else that this is the exact flow you need to follow and you'll get the output. You should try with ChatGPT and see if that works out. And if your prompt is so and so called prompt engineering, if that's great, you're very likely to get a great output there.
Got it. Very interesting. So, Dhaval, what are the latest developments in ChatGPT and AI in general?
I mean, I can try to answer that question, but by the time we release this podcast, the answer might be stale. But yeah, I mean, while we're recording this, we have GPT-4, which was launched few days back. It has now browsing capabilities. I think almost everybody who is having access to the plus version of ChatGPT, they have access to browsing capabilities of GPT. So GPT can search the internet and give you the answers. So earlier, there was a cutoff around 2021 September. Now that has been extended. I mean, because it has access to the internet. There are a bunch of different plugins available. You can something like one of the plugin I used was Ask My PDF or Chat with PDF, where you can upload, give a link to a PDF, and then start asking questions about that PDF. That okay, give me a summary, answer this question from this PDF, and all of those things you can do. Obviously, there are independent tools built on top of ChatGPT and GPT APIs, but this is now all built inside that one single chat-based interface we see on chat.openai.com. That's one thing. So GPT-4 is now becoming more and more powerful, and like all the resources, all the blogs, Twitter threads, everything I read, almost everybody is unanimously saying that GPT-4 is the most powerful model, the best output out there right now. Then we also have the faster model of GPT-4, that is GPT 3.5. There are other companies as well which are building that, like Facebook is building its own. There's something called Anthropic. They have recently increased the token size. So earlier I was talking about that there is a limitation of the input parameter you can give. Anthropic has recently released 100k token limit. So you can put a very, very long PDF of maybe let's say 40-50 pages, and you don't really need to chunk it and split the text into smaller text or anything like that. You can just dump it all and start discussing or start asking questions with that AI right away.
So, Dhaval, you brought up GPT-4, which can now access the internet. I think this was one of the more limiting features of ChatGPT until now, built on top of 3.5. Now that it has access to the internet, it can learn a lot more, a lot faster. It reminds me of that movie, if you have seen, Lucy.
Oh yeah, Scarlett Johansson.
Yes. In that movie, I think it becomes quite trippy towards the end, but the core premise is she gets plugged into the supercomputer, the internet, and starts gaining knowledge of all human civilization so far. And that makes her a superhuman. It's a different topic, but I think I do not know exactly where we are going with this, but getting access to the internet, that is a very, very powerful feature.
So before this was possible via GPT itself, there is another project on GitHub called AutoGPT, which went viral. And I'm not sure if this is true, but I think it's the the project which got the highest number of stars or favorites on GitHub and the lowest number of time in the history of all the projects. Like it has surpassed PyTorch, which is one of the most famous AI related project out there right now. But yeah, that project, what it does is that it gave GPT the access to the internet. It gave GPT access to memory, so you can store data in your system. You can write to files. You can access that back as and when required. It gave GPT access to GPT. So what it would do is that you give it a task that, hey, this is what I want to accomplish. It'll break down the task into smaller subtasks and try to finish those subtasks again with the help of GPT, internet, storage, and everything else which is not available on ChatGPT right now. And that's what it's called. Like they're calling it agents. So you spin up those smaller agents, and they'll try to finish that job for you. And at the end, like it'll also evaluate that is the job done or not. If not, it'll again retry. It'll ask you for confirmation that, hey, should we go ahead with this or that. You can also tell it that don't wait for my input, just go ahead and do whatever you want to do. The outputs are not great every time, but it's just an early version of what's the possibility we'll see in the future. And all of this happened in a matter of 2 or 3 months. And if you look at the project, it's just engineering, like it's just English prompts there, a Python code, but the core part of that code is all prompts. Like, okay, if in this case do this, in this case do that. And that opens an interesting possibility in future, that a lot of engineers right now, they need to know, let's say, JavaScript, Python, PHP. These are all abstractions built on top of earlier languages like assemblies, and like there are multiple layers of abstraction. But I think next abstraction will be English. Like if you know English, you are a programmer, and you will be able to develop those applications by just knowing English, because English will be converted into a programming language with such transformers, and then it will again converted, like what is happening right now also, right? The compilers will convert into a machine readable code, and it will go ahead and execute. So English might become the next most important programming language out there one day.
I think then people like me will become software engineers.
Yeah, for sure.
Before we move to the next topic, I just wanted to comment on what you just said. If AutoGPT is as good as you are saying, and it has all these possibilities, I can only imagine somebody asking it to build a particular feature in a product end to end, and then it spawning, agents to solve sub problems, all related to like now how to go about building a feature. Basically, doing the basic market research for it, doing some kind of user research, or like a simulated user research, identifying the right metrics, building the prototypes, and probably going ahead and launching it on, let's say, something like the product hunt.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud that if it is going to be that capable, the current version or a future version of this technology, I can only imagine the possibilities. You can literally give it a problem statement end to end, and it can solve it for you. It also reminds me of the final scene in WALL-E, the 2008 Pixar movie, where in the end, things have been automated so much, technology is so advanced that people don't have much to do.
Yeah, that's a doomsday. But that also brings me to a point, right? Like when ChatGPT became famous in the early days, a lot of people started asking this question that do we really need product managers? What will happen to them? But I think there is another possibility that you probably only need a product manager in your team. And the product manager might be able to run some agents, take help from ChatGPT, and might be able to write code. I'm not saying that engineers will be replaced that easily, but I think a lot of work, if we are saying that English will be the language, somebody will be able to code, then all you need is a really smart product manager in the team, and they'll be able to do 10x better than what they are doing right now. So you shouldn't even worry, like product managers shouldn't even worry about they being replaced by such tools. I think they'll be empowered with such tools like anything.
That could be very interesting. And like we have talked about before also, um, if you compare the whole thing with something like industrial revolution, I think people are just going to be a lot more empowered, and maybe the need for 10 people would be replaced by one single person, because they will have access to more technology, faster and better technology, and now it's up to them. I think there are two ways to look at all of these things. You can be super paranoid, super worried that you will be replaced, or you embrace the technology and just get better at your craft. Just like, the examples I was giving you earlier in the podcast, I feel I'm a lot more productive now than before because I started using this technology. And I think the same thing is going to happen to the PMs, the engineers, the designers in product teams, which is our focus for the podcast today.
Correct. Yeah. So while let's get deeper into the product management part, right? Let's talk about how product managers can use ChatGPT more efficiently. Do you want to share some of the use cases or how they can become better product managers with the help of GPT?
Sure, we can do that.
So the segue was, tell me what do you think? How can product managers can use ChatGPT?
So depending on the stage of a project, a PM can use ChatGPT in very interesting ways. I will start with the first one, which is one of my favorites, by the way: idea generation and market research. One should never start a project without building confidence that there is a market for this.
Yep.
I think for such use cases, ChatGPT can be super helpful. Let me give you an example with a prompt. Let's say you are the PM at an early stage company which is trying to build a meditation app for working professionals. In that case, there are two possibilities. Either the PM starts from scratch, does market research himself or herself, goes through tons of articles, speaks with people, goes through a lot of reports, or there is a simpler way, which is write a prompt like, I want to build a meditation app for working professionals. Tell me who are the competitors in the Indian market, what are their key value propositions, what are their weaknesses, and present it in the form of a table. And voila, you get the entire table from ChatGPT, which you can look at and then go deep into each of those competitors. Second thing would be, doing some necessary user research. Now that you have, basic market research data, but I know it's not very easy to do effective user research. And there is this very popular book called The Mom Test that most designers, most PMs either use or they should use when they plan their user research projects. In this particular case, you can actually ask ChatGPT, can you come up with 5 good questions that I should ask my users to be more informed about the market opportunity? So identifying the users is still up to you, but what questions you should ask, you can get very useful help directly from ChatGPT.
Correct. You can also mention something like take reference from that book, or here is a summary of Mom's Test book, and just try to build on top of this. So it will actually take a reference from that book itself and give you high quality questions.
Yeah, that is also very useful, I guess.
I think after market and user research, next step would be if things are good to go, then a PM would start writing a PRD. That is definitely one of the most solid use case of ChatGPT out there right now for PMs, right? You can either give it a template or you can just let it free flow that, hey, Jan, this is the feature I want to build. Like, these are the rough spec I have designed. Now go ahead and write the very, very detailed product requirement document. And ChatGPT will just take references on its own from a lot of resources out there, from everything it's being trained on, and it will give you very, very high quality first draft. Uh, Same thing could probably a product manager, a skilled product manager can definitely do it in a day or two, maybe. But the same thing will happen here in a very, very, like, in a short amount of time. Less than 30 seconds, you have your first draft ready. Then, like, if you need to give the requirements to your engineering team or design team, you need to start writing stories. And there again, a lot of product managers with whom I have worked with, they don't feel like writing detailed stories as such. But it's an important part of a job, of their job, right? So they can use again ChatGPT and tell them that, hey, this is my PRD, these are my personas, and can you help me write 3 or 4 stories around that? And ChatGPT will again go ahead and give you very high quality detailed stories around the feature you want to build. Once that's done, maybe, things will move to engineering team, but you can figure out what kind of testing needs to be done, what kind of events you want to track in your application. All of those things, again, you can obviously think about them, but you can take help from ChatGPT. So these are a few use cases. Another one is slightly overlapping with marketing team, but product manager in an early stage company usually it's also responsible for writing copies across the product. And I find it very, very hard to come up with those ideas that, okay, what kind of copy would go really very well on this particular button or on this particular hamburger menu. ChatGPT again can be very, very helpful there. You tell that, hey, give me 10, 20, 50 different variations, and then you have that list then and there. And you can pick the best possible one which you feel that works for your use cases. So I think it can definitely empower a product manager like anything here. And like, not really just a PM use case here, but another use case is that if you are giving interviews anywhere, then you can tell that, hey, my next interview is with an engineering manager. What kind of questions I can expect if I'm interviewing at so and so company? You give some details there, and you can get some rough questions to prepare for. And you can also ask ChatGPT to behave like an interviewer and just practice your questions then and there. On the other side, if you are taking the interview, there's something Prasoon, who is director of product at Razorpay right now. He told us in our last meetup that what he would do is he would take the resume of the candidate, dump it on ChatGPT, and ask ChatGPT that, hey, I'm interviewing this particular person for so and so role. Can you give me 10 different questions? These are the skills I want to test for. Can you give me 5, 10 different questions across each skill? And that saves a lot of time, right? You don't need to review resume, figure out what needs to be asked and everything. It definitely saves a lot of time for everybody.
Sounds like a very nice use case. I'm just wondering whether it will lead to more people becoming lazy,
For sure.
smarter with how they want to use their time.
Smart people are lazy.
That's true. It's actually the majority of smart people I have seen. One thing you didn't talk about enough, but I think it's part of the PRDs anyway, which is like, once you have built this feature, how are you going to launch the feature? Basically, all around go to market. So I think that is also something where you can use ChatGPT. Now that you have built this feature for this user, this type of user, to solve this problem, and these are the success metrics, then you'd want to build early confidence as to, when you are going to launch it, what is going to be your communication to the users. You can actually take its help in writing the email messages, the social media messages, or even copies for your product hunt launch. In all those things, all related to GTM, you can utilize something like ChatGPT.
Yep.
In fact, you can also feed data of a product in your space or a different space which had very good GTM strategy executed. You can ask it to replicate that and give you suggestions how you should go about it.
Yeah. And it will become more and more simpler. Like, now we already have internet access. The token limits will be increased. So right now it's a tedious process. You need to take data from a bunch of different resources and dump it on the ChatGPT UI. You'll again face problems with token limit and everything. But over a period, I think things are improving because it will have internet access. You just put those links there, and the token limit will be higher, so it can analyze more and more data. and this process will be much better. I mean, rather than like it can on its own figure out what was the best product hunt launch for a similar product of yours, and it'll go ahead, learn from that particular launch and give you the insights right away, rather than you figuring out that okay, what was the top product and you searching, giving data. I think, and in near future we'll have this with us there, where a lot of things, like specifically with this whole internet browsing capabilities, I think it'll become more and more powerful.
The more I think about it, I can't help but wonder what would be the highest abstraction. Are we saying in the near future we will have founders or PMs just saying, this is the customer person I want to target, and this is the problem that I want to solve for them. Please go ahead and come up with everything end to end.
Yep.
That would be crazy. But it will also solve more problems. I don't think we have a dearth of problems in the world, particularly in developing countries. I feel more people learning to solve problems is better for the society.
Yeah, and if that works, I think that's how you make 2, 3, 4 crores a year.
So Dhaval, at startups, being data driven is very important. Something that a lot of people talk about. And when it comes to roles in product, whether you are a product manager or you are a product analyst or even a founder, there is a lot of data analysis that you have to do. Once you have built the early product and you want to figure out how to drive adoption, how to drive growth, are there some use cases related to data analytics that you have come across, which you were able to, solve using ChatGPT?
Yeah, so if we are looking at very small data set, right? Probably let's say 100 rows and 3 or 4 attributes. In that case, it's very easy. Like you can just copy paste, dump the data on that window and ask some relevant questions. So this is what I have done. Like when we started our first cohort on backend engineering, I had all the profiles of our learners, and one option I had was that I can put it in a Google Sheet and then slice and dice the data. But it's anyway a smaller data set, so I can just copy paste it into ChatGPT, and I started asking question that, hey, give me this, tell me how many of them are in so and so experience range, how many of them are coming from so and so background. And the good thing is, compared to Google Sheet where it'll do an exact match, or it'll have those proper condition, ChatGPT is more free flowing, right? You can ask those questions easily and you can get the data. So again, very very simple use case. But if you have if the data set is smaller, I think it's very very easy to analyze it via ChatGPT, or even the kind of feedback you get on the different Play Store or App Stores or Google reviews or anything. If you want to analyze it, you can easily dump the data again and then try to figure out that, okay, what are the pain points for my customers? What is the most pressing concern, or what are the top 5 pressing concerns for them? And you'll get that data right without you going through the whole data set manually or going through that one by one. So those are few use cases. But having said that, the one limitation here is still the limit around token size. But if you have seen this new demo around code interpreter, where they uploaded CSV and asked ChatGPT that you figure out, or you tell me some unique insights from this data itself, or give me the top 5 most interesting insight. You're not even telling ChatGPT that what insight you want. You're just letting ChatGPT figure out by looking at the data, by looking at your parameters, by looking at the size of the information. And then ChatGPT is that code interpreter model. I don't have the access right now, but as per the demo, it looks like that it is running Panda and it is renting those graphs for you. So there is not just the language interpretation, but also code interpretation is happening behind the scenes. And you get that output, you get those charts and graphs right away then and there, without writing any line of code, without having any data analyst working with you. So that's again super early days, but I think that's going to empower almost everybody in the team, not just PMs, not just founders, but almost everybody who interacts with data. I think they don't really need to depend on other data analyst, they don't really need to depend on analyst or somebody in their team to help them with very simple queries or questions. They can get that information right away.
Got it. You talked about the limit on the token size, because of which it's pretty easy to do basic data analysis, small data sets. But in all practical scenarios, when we think of consumer companies or even B2B companies, where they have probably 1 million users, in that case, do we currently have the ability to take help from ChatGPT and analyze the data? How do we go about doing that?
So one option which I mentioned obviously that you can, like with the code interpreter model, we will have the ability of uploading a CSV or some other files supporting to it, and the GPT will work against it. So that is one option. Until we have that access, I think the other option is that you telling ChatGPT that, hey, this is my data set. You don't really give the data to ChatGPT, but you tell that, hey, you put dump the data into a table in MySQL or any other database, and tell GPT that, hey, this is what I have in my data set. These are the columns I have. This is the kind of information I have. You give some overview, and then start asking those questions and just get SQL queries from GPT. And you can run those queries against with very simple like any GUI client, install any GUI client and start running those queries against the dataset you have imported. So there is a workaround. Like, you don't really need to know SQL now. You can just write a plain English. ChatGPT will convert it into a very well written SQL, and you can go ahead and use it to analyze your data, slice and dice. What a data analyst would do, same thing can be done by ChatGPT, and without having any dependency on that analyst person.
Yeah, that makes sense, and also makes me wonder what the future of product managers or a product team in general is going to look like. There are a few things I can think of right away. I keep hearing that, just because PMs are going to be a lot more empowered, engineers are going to be a lot more empowered, designers are going to be a lot more empowered if they use ChatGPT or any other modern AI technology. Everyone is wondering how it is going to impact both the cost of building such teams and also the impact on the speed of creating software. I have a few thoughts. I feel if a startup just wanted to build a core product, and if they used to take, let's say, 6 to 9 months of time to build an MVP, get it out in the market for early feedback, or even a team at a larger company which had to, experiment with a new product line, that time will get reduced significantly. They might be able to pull it off in 2 to 4 weeks period. Correct, yeah. And that will really help them, get early feedback from the market and iterate much faster. But in terms of how it will affect the size of such teams, I feel the teams are going to be smaller. If core product teams were, let's say, 8 to 10 people, then I'm talking about pods, by the way. Like, in growth stage companies, you usually have something like a pod structure, a PM, an engineering manager, a few engineers, and maybe a designer. Yeah. So you usually have not more than 8 to 10 people in any pod.
Two pizza teams.
Yes, that's how, Amazon puts it. So I think that size of the teams will definitely get smaller, at least if they are focused on building one core product. The other thing I wanted to talk about would be the increasing focus on becoming a multi-product company. Something that we have seen in India, something that we have seen in the US, even with the previous generation of software or the way we used to build software. For example, in India, we have companies like Zoho, Freshworks. These are all, or even Swiggy. All these are multi-product companies. They probably took 3-4 years, to scale the core product. Then they kept building on top of that. For example, in case of Swiggy, there is the core food delivery product. Then they also launched something called Instamart. They also have something called Genie. And when it comes to something like Freshworks, we have the core customer support product. They also launched something for marketers, Press Marketer. Yeah. And the list goes on.
They have the full suite of softwares now.
Yeah. And in the US also, there are a bunch of companies, whether it is Stripe or it is Rippling, all these companies are multi-product. But they are not the norms. They are the exceptions in the industry. I think that is going to flip. More companies will try to become multi-product because they can build faster, they can ship faster. To hedge their bets, they will probably experiment more with different types of products, targeting the same customer base. And because they can afford to build more with less, more companies are likely to become multi-product, which I think will offset the concern that many people have that the size of companies will also get reduced. I think ambitious companies will do more with technology and not less. So maybe the size of teams will get reduced, but not necessarily the size of companies. That's my hypothesis. We will all have to wait, see, and watch. But I feel that's what the trend is likely to be.
Got it. Okay. So you mean to say more and more smaller teams will be there. We'll see, like, rather than 8 or 9 people being in a pod, we'll have, let's say, 3 or 4 people and they'll be able to do the same work. But now at the same speed, rather than launching just one product, you'll be able to work on 2 different products simultaneously.
That's debatable. There are 2 possibilities. I think most companies would still want to be very focused in the early days. My point is, instead of taking 3 years to build the core product and take it to 10 million in ARR, for some of the fastest growing companies, they would probably take a year or a year and a half. Then launch the second product, then launch the third product. That's something we will have to wait and watch.
Fair enough. Makes sense. Cool. And with that, we come to an end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next one.